welcome to New York City Atheists Live on Tape, brought to you by New York City Atheists. I'm your host, Dennis Horvitz, the David Letterman of the Hopelessly Damned. We have very special guests for the next couple of shows. Our first guest is Terry Sanderson, who is the president of the National Secular Society, which is in England. They're based in London, and I had a whole bunch of questions to ask you, but in talking to you just prior to the show, I guess you'd be better off if you just told us your background, the background of the organization, and why you were here.
Okay. Well, the National Secular Society is a national organisation in Great Britain. It was founded in 1866 by Charles Bradlaugh, who was a radical MP who tried very hard to get elected, but they wouldn't admit him to Parliament because he was an atheist, a self-confessed atheist, and he wouldn't be able to swear the oath.
Right.
So they wouldn't allow him to take his seat, and he stood again in a by-election and was re-elected by the people, sent back to Parliament, and they refused again to admit him because he wouldn't take a religious oath. And this went on for 4 times until eventually the Speaker of the House of Commons said, all right, we'll let you swear the oath even though we know you don't believe it.
Right.
And so he was admitted into Parliament, and eventually he managed to get past a law that permitted people to affirm rather than to swear on the Bible. So that's still in force now. MPs
in this country as well, though.
Yeah. MPs can affirm, and you can affirm in court too. You don't have to swear on the Bible. That's because of Charles Bradlaugh, our founder. But since then, we've been involved in things like the birth control movement, women's rights, gay rights, that kind of thing.
Just can you? I went to your website, and by the way, if you're interested in Ken, we should put the website up on on the crawl. Their website is www.secularism.org.uk, and in going over viewing your website, maybe we could just briefly discuss some of the principles of the National Secular Society, such as protecting the rights of non-believers. Basically, we're an affiliate of American Atheists, which I guess most secular or humanist or atheist organizations have similar types of principles, but you want the disestablishment of the Church of England.
Yeah, we're coming at things from a different angle to you because we've got exactly the opposite situation in England. We've got an established church,
right,
whereas you don't have an established church. You have a law against establishment.
And we have a de facto established
yeah, exactly.
religion.
It's very strange because you don't have an established church and you have a lot of religion.
Right.
We do have an established church and we hardly have any religion
Right.
in society at large.
Right.
Most people are secular.
And that religion. So the religion in your society is kind of imposed from top down.
Yeah, absolutely. The vestiges of sort of traditional power that the Church of England has had since it was established by Henry VIII in Tudor times is still very much exercised by what's left of the Church of England, which is a very small institution now.
I think it was the Archbishop of Westminster. I'm sorry, my knowledge of English clergy is limited, but I think some major church person in England said that basically Christianity was dead in Europe.
Yeah, they all say that from time to time. Certainly, the Archbishop of Westminster, or the Cardinal, is a Catholic, leader of the Catholics in England and Wales, certainly said that Christianity was dead. And the Archbishop of Canterbury has made similar kinds of statements about the way that Christianity is falling out of people's lives entirely. We now have 2 or 3 generations of people who've never been inside a church.
Is that true?
Yeah, and now you've got maybe 7% of the population who are regular church goers, and the rest of the people are just totally indifferent to it.
How much support do you think there is in England for the disestablishment of the Church of England?
Not much, because as I say, that there's indifference
Yeah,
rather than hostility.
it's not really in the way.
Yeah,
is it?
that's right. And if you look at the opinion polls that have been done about it, you see that people will say, yes, I do have some kind of belief, I do believe in something, but they can't quite define what it is. They can't quite let go of the religious sort of concepts.
Well, religion is emotion. It's not about,
Yeah,
it's not
absolutely.
about logic
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah.
It's about-
So they
it's
you know, that
tradition,
you will
sure.
say that they'll tell opinion pollsters that no, I don't believe in God, but I believe in something. Can't quite say what it is. And yes, I do feel that I'm a spiritual person, but I don't quite know what spiritual means. You know, that spirituality is one of these sort of elastic words that stretches to fit any occasion
Sure,
or any.
and
any
it's an
meaning.
emotional term.
Yeah.
It's an emotional term.
So
Maybe you could, just going a little further on this, tell us, as Americans, what is the bench of bishops, and what is their specific problem, your problem with their being affiliated with the House of Lords? I mean, we kind of know, but
yeah.
if you could just be more
Yeah,
specific.
yeah. Well, the House of Lords is the second chamber, obviously,
Right.
the revising chamber in Parliament, and the bishops of the Church of England, 26 of them have the right to sit in the House of Lords and participate in the lawmaking process.
Right.
They're not elected; they're just appointed on seniority within the Church of England, and we feel that that's completely wrong. That in a multi-faith, multicultural society, you have this small denomination with 26 people sitting as of right in the legislature, and we feel that that really they need to be turfed out, basically.
How does that relate to, say, removing the Queen as the titular head of the church?
Yeah.
I mean, I know there's a secular movement
Yeah.
that would like to make England a republic,
Yeah.
and apparently there's a greater percentage of people support it now than, say, did 50 years ago, but
Yeah.
there's
It's
nothing
still-
near a groundswell.
No, there isn't. There isn't. The present monarch, Queen Elizabeth, is still very popular.
Yes.
She's seen as a woman of extreme loyalty, and she never puts a foot wrong. She hasn't been involved in scandals. Her children
Yeah,
have
sure.
all been involved in scandals
Yes.
and of one kind or another. But she is sort of stoical, and everybody remembers her
Yes,
throughout their lives. She's been there
yes.
all that time through everybody's life, but when she dies or lets go of the throne, I don't know what will happen, whether a Republican swell will build.
Well, I don't know. What do Charles's views seem to be vis-a-vis church and state?
Well,
religion,
he
government?
wants to be at the moment, he would be defender of faith,
Right.
i.e. defender of the Church of England,
Right.
if he was monarch, as the present monarch is. He wants to be the defender of faiths. He wants to be the defender of, because Britain has changed since his mother came to the throne, very
Absolutely,
much so.
drastically, yes.
And you cannot say that it's one religion state anymore.
I suppose it's a step in the right direction, but it seems to me at this point almost too little, too late.
Yeah,
We
I think so.
we shouldn't be thinking about a government
But-
having anything to do.
Yeah, absolutely. But the thing is that although the Church of England is such a small institution, so is the Catholic Church, and only 2% of the population are Muslims.
Right.
They seem to dominate the whole conversation
Right.
in Britain. Whatever the bishops say, it's on the front pages, as though anybody cares what the bishops think about things. And the Muslims, because of what happened here and in London and in Madrid and all over the place, everybody's scared of them, and the government is trying desperately to accommodate
To
them.
placate them, yeah, to mollify
And
them.
to mollify them and appease them, and it's this that gives them the power that they have.
Right. Well, isn't it more like the mullahs that have the power? Is it so much the rank and file? I guess the rank and file will do whatever they're told. I don't know.
Well, I'm not sure about that, because looking at the figures, that only 50% of Muslims in Britain go to the mosque. So
That's
there is
encouraging.
there's quite a secular kind of constituency within the Muslim population, but because the government have appointed mullahs and religious leaders and imams and so on to be the spokespeople for these communities, nobody else gets a look in. It's almost completely theocratic, the way that the Muslim community, I should say, is regarded in Britain. In fact, a lot of them just are not religious.
It's funny because a lot of Americans who get this kind of warm and fuzzy idea of having the Ten Commandments hanging in our courtrooms or starting the school day off with a prayer
Yeah.
are not particularly religious themselves, but it's that emotional, that reaction. If you get rid of it, they feel like something's being taken away from them.
Yeah.
And it's it's basically the same. They have the same rights they always had. You know, it's not a big deal. And I think that's it's one of those things that they don't really care unless all of a sudden they're get this kind of a slap in the face that it shouldn't have been there in the first place, or it's no longer appropriate for it to be there. You know. You had an article on your website. You do have an article on your website regarding local councils cutting back on funding for transportation, school bus transportation to school children to religious schools, and apparently this didn't really this rule didn't really start out that way. It's from the Education and Inspections Act of 2006, which was to provide poor children for transportation to schools, and apparently the various religious institutions have completely co-opted this, jumped all over this, and it's almost become uniquely for that purpose, is it not?
Not quite, but the number of poor children who qualify is quite small.
Uh-huh.
But the faith school system, as they call it, to make it sound nice and cuddly, it's actually a religious school with lots of denominational splits. And in Northern Ireland, you know, the Catholic and the Protestant schools, I'm sure, helped keep the troubles going for as long as they did, because they reinforce this idea of differences. But a third of schools in Britain are under religious control, mostly Church of England and Catholic. And if the kids who want to go to them, or their parents want them to go to them, and the nearest religious school of that denomination is more than, I think it's 4 miles away, they're entitled to have the transportation paid for them by the state. And
apparently there's less and less money to go around for that sort of thing.
Yeah, councils are cutting back on all kinds of things, and this seems like a very easy thing to cut back on, because if you're not part of that denomination,
right,
you don't get school transport paid. So if there are spare places that haven't been taken by children of that religion at the school, they're given to people outside the religion. But if they come from a distance to the school, they don't get paid. The transportation is not paid. They have to pay themselves. So they may be going to the same school on the same bus, but they have to pay. And the kids who've been baptized into the religion of the school don't.
And this is true, but now the basically it's the Catholic churches that are raising the most complaint. But this is also true of the Church of England as well.
Yeah.
And I guess the idea is that they want to just get removed, except for all but the poorest. Is that correct?
Yes.
So apparently this is going to. But the Catholics are the churches. They're kind of claiming victimization.
Yeah, they're calling it a tax on Catholics.
A tax on Catholics.
But of course, that's just turning the whole thing on its head.
Of course it is.
Because
right,
you know, it's just a tax on everybody else to pay for the Catholics. Otherwise,
so we wouldn't know anything about that, would we? No, I mean that's the same. That seems to be a common tactic. Is that you know, they have more than they're entitled to begin with. They get this sense of entitlement, and then when somebody comes to their senses and decides to put the brakes on, then it's victimization.
Yeah.
So they're being persecuted because they're Muslims or Catholics or whatever they are.
There was another very interesting thing happened recently. Catholics run adoption agencies in Britain, and the government decided, because of new equality legislation that actually covers atheists now, we're protected from discrimination in the same way that believers are, and because homosexuals are also protected, it became a clash between the rights, or so-called rights of Catholics, and the rights of homosexuals, because the Catholics were saying, we do not want homosexuals to access our adoption agencies. And the government said, well, sorry, we've given homosexuals the same rights as everybody else, so you can't stop them. You're providing a service, and they're entitled to use it. And the Catholic Church has actually begun to close these agencies down, rather than serve the gay community.
Well, see that. I mean, that's what happens when you initiate that kind of relationship between a religion and government.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. But it's been very reassuring, that, because when you think about the way that the Catholics and the Church of England have managed to get themselves all kinds of privileges of that kind, and that they're suddenly being taken away from them one by one. And the government keeps saying repeatedly, "Oh, this is not a secularizing mood. Oh, no, no, no! Don't take it. This is not the first step towards disestablishment. Don't worry about it." And then they do another thing, and I'm thinking, well, this is either a very careful tactic to do it step by step, and the abolition of the blasphemy law was another one that the bishops gave into very, very reluctantly, but they had to give in, and that was another of their little privileges gone.
Well, it doesn't have to be a malevolent plot. It can be just, dare I say it, evolution.
Yeah, it's justice being.
I mean that's just the way the things the cookie crumbles, as they say. It's the way it is. I mean, I would feel a lot better about it if it were, especially in this country, deliberate and methodical.
Yeah.
Done deliberately because somebody recognized that it was a violation of our Constitution, of the principles of separation of church and state.
Well, of course, we don't have those protections in Britain, but the present government does seem to be doing it sort of very, very gradually.
Well, just between you and I, we don't have those protections here either. So we may be guaranteed those, but
we don't even have them in theory.
Yeah. I don't know. So who's more to blame? I don't know which country. In any case, before we get to the end, I did want to ask you the general purpose of your being here. I know that you're here with Keith Wood, who's the executive director of the National Secular Society. So if maybe you could just briefly tell us why exactly you're in New York.
Well, we're in New York for a few days just to see the city, but we're going on to Boston to the American Humanist Association.
D.C.
Yes, Washington D.C.
Yeah, I said Boston.
Sorry, did I say Boston? I'm sorry. I meant Washington D.C.
Built by the same people, same crowd.
Yeah. The American Humanists.
Just to apologize, you come to apologize. For
Yeah. We went to Boston to the American Atheists conference, and we had to apologize there for sending the religious maniacs over in the first place.
They invited you to a tea party. Right? So you're going. That's right. You're going to the Humanist Convention in Washington. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to make it this year. But maybe next year.
Yeah.
And what are you going to present?
Keith is going to do a presentation about what's going on at the United Nations in respect of religious defamation, which is being demanded by the Muslim representatives on the Human Rights Council, and also he's going to talk about AIDS and the people who are actually preventing the right kind of approach to contain it.
And actually, the Vatican has a special seat in the United Nations, doesn't it?
Yes.
Observation.
It has a special observer status.
Status.
Because you see, the Vatican, although it's only a sort of pocket handkerchief-sized piece of land in Rome, it presents itself as a state.
Well, I think it is. Isn't it actually represented? Isn't it actually recognized as an official state?
Yes. Yeah.
I know it is.
There are a lot of special observer states.
Right, but I mean,
the Palestinians have it, for example. There are a lot of them.
The Palestinians have. I know, but the Vatican itself, I mean, aside from the special observer status, is recognized as a state.
Oh yeah,
in Europe.
It has a huge network of diplomats around the world, the so-called papal nuncios, and they always get, privileged positions in the legates and in the embassies and so on. They're always there. It's one of the best informed networks of diplomats anywhere.
Well, it's either that, I guess, or antagonize millions of Catholics all over,
all
over the world. Yeah. But I mean, religion. There's sometimes we in the United States, as members of atheist organizations, there's a tendency, we get bashed mostly by Christians because it's mostly Christians in this country, but most of our criticism is directed towards Christians because they happen to be the majority religion. But I try to make it very clear that if it wasn't Christians, then it would be somebody else, and if they were doing the same thing, then they would be equally as, because religion is emotional and it's opportunistic.
Yeah.
And
very much so.
And so you're going to deal with the United Nations. Now you said something about was it AIDS and the rights of women, I believe. Is there something about the blasphemy laws too?
Yeah. We've just had the blasphemy law, which is an ancient medieval law
Sure.
in Britain. It's just been abolished. And we, at the National Secular Society, this has been one of our primary campaigns during the whole of the 140 years we've been in existence. So I'm very pleased that it's gone on my watch. We're having a special party to celebrate that next month, and we've got Ian McKellen coming along, who is going to read the last poem that was prosecuted in Britain for blasphemy
How wonderful.
in 1972. And we've got other people who are coming along, like the authors of Jerry Springer the Opera, which was also an attempt was made to prosecute that for blasphemy, and that really was what caused the blasphemy law to fall, because the judge ruled that the blasphemy law could not be applied to that show, and actually it could hardly be applied to anything. So that's what pushed the government into abolishing it, as well as the fact that in the Sudan, an English woman was arrested because she named a teddy bear Muhammad
Yes.
for her kids in the class, and the government realised that they couldn't go around to these Muslim countries criticising them for exercising blasphemy laws when we still had one.
Right.
So that was also a good way, a good sort of motivation for them to get rid of it. So it's gone, I'm very pleased to say.
One question from out of the blue. I noticed on your website that you had some, I guess, some response from people, and one of whom was Richard Harris. Is that Richard Harris, the late actor, or is it some other Richard Harris?
No, it's another one.
Okay, all right. I'm very disappointed with that, but I don't know what Richard Harris's religious convictions were. But, I have a feeling he's.
One of us.
I tend to have that feeling. Maybe it's wishful thinking. So you're going to the convention now. Are you actually going to the United Nations? You are.
Yeah, we've got an appointment to meet Amnesty International there,
Great.
who are an NGO at the United Nations, and we're very much into the human rights sort of field now, because we feel that is really the replacement for religion. It's if people want a code by which to live,
Yes.
a human rights charter, a real universal human rights charter, rather than this new Muslim one that they're trying to introduce at the United Nations, called the Cairo Declaration.
Right.
It's a good thing.
And I also this is of course in keeping, and I certainly I didn't have a right to have the time to get all of them, and we don't have a right to have the time to go into all of them. But there's the principles of the National Secular Society include abolition of blasphemy laws, protect free expression from attacks by religious groups. Religion is a matter of conscience. It's not a privileged thing to be imposed on the government. It doesn't have special privileges. You lobbied to the BBC to reduce the amount of religious propaganda, which is being financed by the license pay. In this country, of course, our television is free, but many of our viewers probably are unaware is that in order to watch, to have a television, operate a television set, there is a fee that you have to pay. Is that correct? And the position of your group is that if people have to pay, then they shouldn't have to be paying for religious propaganda.
Yeah, not too much of it.
Not too much of it.
Yeah. I mean, as a public broadcaster, the BBC's got to serve all communities.
I agree. I agree.
We don't mind a small amount, but it's excessive.
Yes.
And the founder of the BBC, Lord Reith, back in the 1930s, was he was a bit of a religious maniac himself, and it was him that wrote into the charter that there would be religion, and sometimes when you switch the BBC radio on, you think, not another bishop,
Right.
not another cardinal.
And you think this is vastly disproportionate to the actual number of people
who are interested
who
in
are
religion.
who are even interested. But it would seem to, well, of course, you're only you're, I guess, a virtual secular state, but you're not a nominal secular state.
Yeah, I mean, the whole of Europe seems to be rapidly becoming a secular state.
Yes.
And the strange thing is that religion is beginning to get a very big toehold in the European Union and in the European Parliament.
That's amazing to me.
The Catholic Church is very determined to make its influence powerful there, and it's succeeding because it's got a lot of place people. You know, we keep finding politicians in very high positions who are members of Opus Dei or you know, they're papal knights or something. And you think, well, who are they serving? Are they serving the Vatican or are they serving the people of Europe?
And speaking of papal knights, actually on your website there was someone was given a papal knighthood for parliamentary services to the Vatican. Can you briefly tell us what that was about?
That's a chap called Jim Dobbin, who's
Jim Dobbin, that's right.
an MP, and he was made a papal knight. He's very much into anti-abortion activity,
Yes.
and he's chair of the all-party pro-life group or something it's called. So he's working very hard to bring the Vatican agenda into Parliament, and strangely enough, during a recent debate we had on the Human Fertilisation and Embryology Bill, which was about embryology research as well as IVF and for lesbians and things like that, the Catholic Church became incredibly active.
The Catholics are actually the minority of Christians in England.
Yeah, but they're extremely politically active, and increasingly so.
I guess that's what it has to be, is that when the laity just in fact sit back and do nothing, and well, they've got the jobs in their lives to think about, and it's kind of slipped under the
and of
door.
course, if anybody says, you know, there's too much Catholic influence here, they immediately start wailing about, you know, we're being persecuted.
I have to start wailing because we have come to the end of another great